Welcome to the Data Friday. My name is Michael Schimke. I'm the CEO of Scalefree. Essentially, we do this session here every Friday to allow you, the audience, to ask questions about Data Vault, data-driven applications, data mining, cloud computing, MPP stuff, anything data relevant essentially. You can use, if you have a question, you can use the chat here in the client. You can use the Q&A function in the client. You can just raise your hand. I would give you a voice. Don't misuse that. Or I'll give you the link to a form where you can submit your questions, which most people do these days. You can submit a question via a form, and then I pick it up for one of the next meetings, essentially. One way or the other, up to you. If we receive multiple questions, I'll be cherry picking. And a good question can be answered within 10 minutes, 15 minutes of a live stream, essentially, just like today. If there would be no questions at all, I would talk about the MVP stuff here, but in all honesty, I didn't do much. So I'm glad that you're sending in questions. That's really cool. Thanks for that. Thanks for that. I'm a bit sick today, but it should be fine. I will survive the next 10 minutes or 15 minutes with you guys. So let me show you the question of today. So this one is about effectivity satellites on links. Question is essentially, when should I use effectivity satellites and link satellites? What makes a difference with regular satellites? Why should I choose and how should I choose? And some examples. Okay, so here's the thing. The short answer is the effectivity satellite is just a standard satellite, period. We're done. That was the shortest Data Friday ever, right? It's not that simple. But really, from a structure, from a loading perspective, from any perspective, the effectivity set is a standard satellite. Don't get confused. A lot of people you find a lot of articles online where people confuse or mix the effectivity satellite with multi-temporal designs. Yeah, they have something to do with it, but the multi-temporal timelines, let's say a valid from a to date or some contract start and end date, we just attach to the effectivity satellite as a standard attribute. So you could actually attach those attributes, the valid from a to dates, to your standard satellites as well, where you keep your first names, last names of the customers, and so on. So the effectivity satellite is just based on a satellite split, in all honesty. There was a satellite split performed to separate some of these attributes into their own satellite. And what do we separate here? We separate the business timelines coming from the source, let's say the valid from a to dates, contract dates, start and end dates, right, and so on. Maybe a modified, created, and deleted date from the source. Well, deleted is a good keyword here. Any soft deletes from the source system. Typically a timeline, let's say a deleted date, but also a is deleted. I like to capture in the effectivity satellite as well. And then the effectivity satellite also contains a deletion field that how we capture soft deletes in the data warehouse. So when a record gets physically deleted in the source system, we don't want to delete this physically in the data warehouse, right? But we want to keep track of those physical deletes in a source system. We want to keep track of those in the data warehouse. So what we do is, typically when we recognize a deletion in a source system, we use the load date of the current run where we recognize the deletion. We take that load date as a deletion timeline in the effectivity satellite. So they say deletion timeline, deletion date or something. And that's the load date when you recognize the physical deletion in the source system. And that is the challenge. That's the only big challenge here. Because everything else, all these modified timelines and valid from a to timelines, they're typically coming from the source, at least if the effectivity satellite is considered part of the raw data vault, because then the data must come from a source. So you got these fields in the source system, you just split them off into their own satellite. So the only challenge at the moment is the deletion timeline. And that really depends on how you get data delivered. So, because you have to calculate this somehow. And calculation here means not a business calculation, it's really a fact. And we turn the fact, does the record exist in the source or not, into a descriptive feature. That's it. So, I'll give you an example. Let's say you get full loads from the source. Every day, a full load of all your contracts, I don't know. We could compare two loads. The data that we have in the raw data vault, we compare against the data in the staging area. And assuming you're looking at a reliable source system, if the contract is gone, based on the business key, is gone from the staging area, we assume the business key, the contract has been removed from the source system, and therefore it has been deleted. And the same is true for relationships. Think about this. A relationship in the source system is often derived from foreign keys, or in other terms, a foreign key is an indicator for a relationship. Not in 100% of the cases. Think about reference data. But yeah, that's the idea. So if on both sides there's a hub, then you have a relationship essentially. And the idea now is what can happen to the source data? So let's say you got employees and corporate cars. So inside your employee record, you have a assigned corporate car, and they can change that, right? But for me, you have two link entries now. There's two link entries, one between the employee and the old corporate car, and one between the employee and the new corporate car. Two link entries, and the effectivity satellite attached to the link essentially describes when the foreign key was deleted. And think about this. An update on the corporate car, on this foreign key essentially, of the employee record means an update is like a deletion of the old version of the record and an insert of the new version. That's a deletion. So that's an update. So there's a deletion involved in the underlying model, in underlying data. And that means when there's an update on the foreign key to the corporate car, we end date, and by that I don't mean a load end date, I mean the end dating of the deletion timeline. We set the deletion timeline to the current load date timestamp of the old relationship, because we recognize this old relationship is gone, it's deleted. And there's a new one. So we add a new link entry to the new car and a new entry to the effectivity satellite with the deletion timeline of n of all times typically. That's the active record. So of those two links, if I want to know what's the active relationship, I select the data from the links, join the effectivity satellite, maybe with a PLT table, join the effectivity satellite, and filter for those records where the end date, the deletion timeline is n of all times. Those are the active relationships. The rest you can ignore for a type 1 presentation. And if they realize, well, the corporate car is scrap, I mean, dumped it against the next tree or something, right? Then you get the old corporate car again. So they update the record again, the foreign key to the corporate car with the old record. You don't add a link because the relationship between the employee and the old corporate car is already known. What you do is you insert two new deltas, one new delta into the old effectivity satellite, where you set the deletion timeline to n of all times, because that's the current active relationship again. And I'm setting a new delta, I'm loading a new delta into the effectivity satellite for the other relationship between the employee and the new corporate car, and set that deletion timeline to the current load date timestamp, because I recognize this foreign key is gone. So that's what I can do. That's the loading process. And if you have full loads, you can do this easily, because you compare essentially what's available, how it's either changed or what was removed, and then produce the deltas for the effectivity satellite essentially. So you can just query the new records, the changed records, that's new deltas in the satellite. The deleted records and the updated records are also new deltas in the satellite, but with a deletion timeline, and set to the current load date timestamp. And then it depends. So if you get, let's say, CDC data, that's great, because CDC data gives you typically, or should give you, a flag that a record got deleted or updated. And you know now that deletion means one delta into the satellite, where we set the deletion date to the either current load date. I would use the CDC date, because that's the most appropriate date. That's when you know the record was deleted. When it's updated, you have two facts here. One fact is the old relationship got deleted and the new relationship gets inserted. And depending on the CDC mechanism, in the good ones, you have both the flags, insert, update, delete, the new version of the record and the old version of the record. Easy to load, right? If you don't have that, it gets more challenging. And then you could also think about delta loads, for example. A delta load, if it would be complete, in my opinion, a good delta is the inserted and the updated records, but also the deleted records. That's a delta, right? Those three components, just like in CDC. Problem is, what you get as a delta is what I call a dirty delta, or incomplete data, is maybe a better term. Incomplete data only contains the inserted and updated records, but where's the deletes? Well, the source system has deleted them, so they don't have that anymore, right? So be it. That's not a complete delta. And now you could only guess. Well, you could also get a full load of just the business key column, because that's sufficient to compare what business keys have been removed and therefore calculate the deltas for the effectivity satellite. So it depends really on the loading mechanism, how we calculate the deletion timeline in the effectivity satellite. That's the only difference, because you have to turn the fact that a record physically still exists or has been removed or has been inserted. This fact about the physical existence of the record in a source, you have to turn into a descriptive attribute in the raw data vault. That's it. So I'm not changing the fact. I'm just changing the structure of the fact. That's it. I'm turning a deletion or insert into a descriptive column, into a column, essentially. That's it. It's a hard rule, essentially. It's not a business rule. Yeah, that's the idea. Talk about business rules. There's also a good amount of business effectivity satellites in the business vault. So in the raw data vault, the data must come from somewhere, either from the source system or from your hard rule, where you turn the physical existence of the record into a descriptive field. Fine. With all the complicated mechanisms depending on the loading mechanism. There's easy ones and so on. But in the business vault, you're free to do whatever you want. You can calculate these fields. So let's say you have and there's a good reason why you want to calculate something in the business vault. Let's say the source system delivers you a business timeline from the source that says this corporate car was assigned to this employee from day X to day Y. But day Y is before day X. Can't be true, right? So there must be a business rule. How do we deal with those records? How do we cleanse those timelines? Can we just set them equal? Just switch them? I don't know. Don't ask me. Ask the business user, right? And then you implement this as a business vault, as a business rule in the business vault. That's also an effectivity satellite. There could be cases where you have a new hiree, and this hiree starts on the 1st of January. But the 1st of January is not a working day. I mean, at least not in Germany or in Europe. At least in Germany. I know for sure in Germany. So it's not a working day. So you can't start working here at Scale-Free on the 1st of January. So you have to start working on the 2nd, but only if it's a Monday, that kind of stuff, right? So there could be a calculation where you calculate maybe the effective first working day based on a contract or something. Because the contract could say 1st of January, but then the first effective working day is the 3rd of January or something. So there could be a good amount of calculations either for cleansing the data, for optimizing the data downstream, and so on. Or maybe based on some business rules, based on the business data, you calculate some effectivity dates or something. Could also be the case. And then the effectivity satellite is in the business vault, but it follows the same design. It's just a standard satellite with some timelines in it. Yeah, and there's also one more comment about the deletion detection, because deletion detection is an important part of the effectivity satellite. And it's a challenging part, to be honest. Let's say you get deletion fields, and you want to when do you consider a customer as being deleted? Well, some users would say when the customer has been removed from my leading source system, let's say the CRM system. But the leading system, by definition, is a business rule already, or business definition, because depending on who you ask, they have different leading systems, right? So that's number one. And then let's say in Salesforce, for example, in Salesforce, there's a soft delete in the source system, an is deleted flag. So when do you consider the customer as being deleted? If the record has been soft deleted in the source system, if it's in a trash bin of Salesforce, or if the record has been physically deleted from Salesforce. Because Salesforce really acts like in a way you can delete a record, it ends up in a trash bin, I believe for a couple of days, 30 days or something, or you can also empty the trash bin immediately. And then it gets physically removed. So when do you consider the customer as being deleted? I'm out, I have no idea. That depends on the user, right? So ask them. But this business rule, you implement in the effectivity satellite in the business vault. And then it's a bit more complicated. Because if you have all these different source systems, some people could say, well, if the customer is removed from those two systems, then I consider the customer as being deleted. Or I had once a case where the customer said, or the user said, we consider the customers being deleted when it's removed from all the source systems. Never seen it happen, by the way, but that was the business rule. All active customers. So what you have to do is in the raw data vault, you have to collect per source system. Does the business key in the hub still exist? And same true for relationships. Are these relationships still existing? You do this, you capture this fact for every source system and every hub and link typically. There might be exceptions to the rule, but most of your hubs, most of your links should have effectivity satellites, one per source system, one way or the other. And then once you collected all these facts in the raw data vault, in the business vault, you have another effectivity satellite where you implement the business rule, when do you consider the customers being deleted, depending on the source systems, the logical flags, the soft deletes in the source, the physical deletes, I don't know. Just come up with something based on the business definition, and that's what we implement in the business vault and can use downstream essentially. That's how we use the effectivity satellites, essentially. Yeah. And the only exception where we don't have effectivity satellites is on non-historized links and dependent chart links and bridge tables, because we typically have a better design. The technical counter transactions in the non-historized links and dependent chart links, that's a better design to capture changes to transactions, facts, messages, and so on. That's the idea. All right, cool. Good timing. Perfect. So if you have a question like this, so don't get confused by the effectivity satellite. It's really a standard satellite. It's only the identification of or definition, calculation of the deletion timeline. That's the challenge. Everything else, what you read online, when they start mixing timelines or multi-temporal solutions with effectivity satellites, and even worse, the driving key. The driving key, by definition, has nothing to do with the effectivity satellite. No. I'm not a big fan of the driving key, I agree, but it has nothing to do with it, period. And we do produce downstream multi-temporal dimensions and facts using the timelines in the effectivity satellites. But you could also keep them in the standard satellites. I could still use them downstream. So what's the advantage of the effectivity satellite, by the way? Quite simple. If I query a raw data vault or a data vault in general, I need to know often what's the active relationship, what's the active business key, and so on. And for that, I'm joining these effectivity satellites a lot. In all my queries, for every hub, for every set link, I query at least one, maybe multiple times more than one effectivity satellite. There's a lot of effectivity satellites involved in my queries. If you do it right and consistent and so on. That's what it is. And so I need to know, where are these timelines, the deletion timelines, but also the business timelines, where are they in your model? And you can either make it simple for me, you just separate them and have naming conventions. At Scalefree, we use ES for an effectivity satellite and S for a standard satellite, MS for multi-active and so on. So ES, I know immediately, well, that's where the timelines are. So I can quickly look at this and just join it and use it. Or you keep the timelines, the deletion timeline, the business timelines, everything in the standard satellite. But then you have to mark those timelines in the metadata of the raw data vault. And I'm a big fan that a data vault model should be self-explaining. So it's nice to have metadata. It's nice to have the documentation somewhere and so on. Yes, I use it, but I try to run my queries without it. The best case is if the raw data vault explains itself. That's the best case scenario. And that's why I also prefer the effectivity satellites over text in the metadata to identify these timelines. Why do we do this? One is to support the power users, and the metadata either the metadata in the flags in the metadata or the effectivity satellites can also be used by a business vault automation. Think about this: when you get bored by the raw data vault, everything is automated at 100%, and you can automate the raw data vault at 100%. You get bored. So what's next? And the next step could be to automate parts of the business vault. And then it's handy if the business vault automation framework, which doesn't exist, by the way, would know where the business timelines are. And that's why we tag those business timelines and mark them. And the effectivity satellite is just a user-friendly version for the power users as well. Yeah, that's the basic idea, essentially. All right, cool. So when you have a question like this, use this form here at https://sfr.ee/dvfriday. That's where you can submit your questions like this, upload pictures if you want, maybe a drawing if you want. Keep it small so it fits on HD screens, right? And we have more webinars. When you go to scalefree.to/webinars, you'll find registration forms for our Warescape webinar and the DBT webinar, where the tool experts for those tools are essentially following a similar format here, just like me, presenting some ideas and so on. And if you can't wait until next Friday, when the next Data Friday is, you can also join the Data Innovators Exchange, which is a forum-style community where you can ask questions and they get relatively fast answers on those questions, essentially. So also an option for you to join. Cool. Then I think we're done. Enjoy your weekend. It's very windy in Germany, in northern Germany where I'm located. But so be it. And good day to stay in the house, essentially, and do some side work. Yeah, enjoy your weekend. See you next Friday, hopefully. Thanks.